Howdy, folks. Welcome back to another week of Deck Check. We got a whole fresh slew of lists that are all up to, well, mostly up to date. They're with over the past like week or so of tops that we saw in Digimon card meta. Before we jump into the whole meat of going over some of these decks and whatnot, which you're already kind of getting spoiled on one of them right now. Just want to say thank you to all our members for being part of the community and supporting us handsome boys in the channel. We appreciate you very much. So if you would like to get early access to this content when you're seeing this public on Friday or beyond, think about becoming a member. You get early access to our members' first deck profiles as well as deck check. You get it about 2 days, I guess, technically, or be early.
Want to remember to actually set the date correct.
Also, yeah, that's true. I am also guilty. It is not just you. It is also my fault. But yeah, so if you want early access to that content, you can think about doing that. And otherwise, if you're just enjoying this stuff and you want to stick around, think about subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video if you enjoy this stuff, and just let us know what decks you guys want to see moving forward. Yeah, we're right on the horizon for the ban list coming up.
Yep.
So we know that there's going to be there might be some big shifts. It also might just be like the Greymon X incident where we get one card and then that's it. So we'll see what happens. I don't think that's going to happen, but we got lots of cool stuff going on.
Yeah.
But without further ado, I'll let you go ahead and take it off with the first list we have here, which is there's some weird stuff in here.
Yeah. So this is a Sakuya list that was piloted by a tamer in China. Got first place at a tamer battle. So looks like it was a pool of 20 people. So I mean, it was a pretty significant pool size of players. And this is not your like Sakuya like Tau loop shenanigans with like ruin mode looping Taus. This is more of a like base Sakuya, which I think is having a little bit more of a resurgence. I've tested this out, a similar list, and I've had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think the new support pieces really actually like kick it into high gear and makes it at least competitive. I don't know if I would necessarily call it tier 1 by any means, but it's still a really fun and strong list in its own right. A few highlights here. We won't go through every single card, but the Viximon is something that a lot of, I think, people who are building Sakuya were sort of between the old EX2 and the new BT-19 Viximon.
Right.
This list is running the new one, and I am now team BT-9 Viximon as well. Being able to recycle your plugins actually is really huge. Like, it feels really, really good. I see where the draw power is nice, but you do deck yourself out pretty quickly with this deck, so I think being able to recycle stuff is really nice. The Rena X that we got from EX8 is also one of those cards that will do that. Really, really good card. I still think the BT-17 Rena is probably one of the better ones because you get the potential for a double hit with the option card as well as like the Rika / like Sakuya pieces. You get something check -1 as an inheritable, which is actually a pretty good inheritable to have with how often you're using your option cards and being able to like kind of stunt your opponent's board, so to speak. And then you kind of see the basic like Sakuya line, right? You've got your Rene lines, you've got your QBs. I'm interested to see if this is like a translation / miss like carryover from card meta here. It's this Climbmon from BT-16. I see like the first line, I'm like, okay, draw 2 could be something, but then it's like it has nothing to do with Sakuya afterwards. And then the inheritable also has nothing to do with Sakuya. So I'm wondering if this instead is the new Taumon that we got that has barrier. I believe in BT-17, I believe, or 19. One of the Taumons.
Yeah.
It has barrier and allows you to use an option card on Evo. And then when attacking as an inheritable, it lets you use an option card that's 5 costs or less from your hand. That one makes much more sense to me, personally, in this list.
Yeah, because you can't...
Both Taumons, yeah.
You can't Evo over this Climbmon with any of your Sakuyas. So
correct.
I feel like it has to.
It makes no sense here.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I think it's the old Taumon that we should be seeing here. It just kind of got mistranslated.
Yeah.
But I think both Taumons are very strong in their own right. It's just depending on what you want to do. The Sakuya X or the Sakuya lines, again, just being able to play out tokens, I think really helps this deck get more aggression that it needed. Before it was kind of lacking in like you built the board, you did your thing, but you're kind of stuck. Now you have tokens that can either be blocker, you have rush, you have ways to unsuspend as well with Sakuya X. So there's a lot of fun things you can do to splash in some aggression. You've got your room modes and your Rikas. It's interesting that this list is running 2 of the old Rika. I'm kind of just stuck on the 4 of the new one because this new Rika is gas.
Yeah.
Being able to search, give yourself memory to extend your plays is really, really good. All for a 3-cost tamer is pretty cracked.
She feels like the BT-15 mat that was for Blue Melga. It was also a 3-drop searcher that gave memory when you added a card to hand by an effect.
Really, really good. And then you've got your slew of options here. You've got trainings and scrambles to help both with Evo cost and consistency. You run your Digivolution plugin as well as your pause plugin. This attack plugin is interesting too, being able to give something check +1. You know, doesn't have to be Sakuya. It could be your tokens. It could be anything. Again, just to help get you more aggression. I myself, we talked about this earlier today. I've definitely considered like the speed plugin to give your cards jamming.
Yeah.
That's also really good.
It can't be blocked.
Yeah. So this one is a little bit more option heavy. I will say you're running like 14 options. I think with your ability with Vixie, Rene X, I feel like you're okay running anywhere between 6 to 8 options and still feel pretty good about it. But this obviously worked for them. So I mean, shout out to them. I think a really good like skeleton or core, you call it, for Sakuya, and you can kind of build your own way depending on your playstyle.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's gonna be interesting to see what people do with Sakuyamon lists outside of Tau Loop, because I think there's lots of ways to kind of customize your build to like what feels good.
There's a lot of potential in it, I will say that.
Yeah,
like I think the deck can do well. We've seen it do well in JP. It was at one of the like topping national decks too. So
it's like
it can do it.
It's like a couple of pieces off of just like being like really good. I think right now it's just like it's passable.
Yeah.
And we've seen it do well in big events, so that's cool. But yeah, this was we don't have the author's name, but they got first place at a card shop, so congrats. Jump into the next. We have Perperial, Virus Imperial. This list got first place at Baoka Amusement over in China. Again, we don't have the author's name. I apologize. But it's pretty standard low end. Outside of, we're not running any of the new rookies. We're actually just going to Uko, which is something I was considering just recently, for just something to just have a little bit more early chip aggression. Because the problem with Virus Imperial is that if you don't see your line early, you don't really chip much, and it can be hard to like push for game when you finally see your line. So Uko is a nice sort of solution to kind of get some extra search and consistency in while maintaining your pace and aggression. I mean, the BT-16 Uko is still just a great card. The 1-cost Evo does not hinder it much at all. And I know you kind of talked about the Uko stuff with Josh on the podcast last week too. But so I'm not going to get too much into that. But, you know, it's a powerful card. But aside from that, pretty standard low end. We see none of the end of turn DNA Flamedras. Instead, we just see them running 4 and 4 of Shadra. Which is interesting to me. And then we have our level 5 lineup with the Dino Bees. 2 of the new Imperialdramon. This new Imperialdramon is actually cracked. It's so good.
Yeah.
Being able to like play this off of Dino Bee and then give it the +4K in piercing and then also give it the rush and attack lets you like swing chip. You can also potentially, like, if you keep turn with your whole play, you can swing Paledra first, do the whole thing, swing Dino Bee after. If either of them would be deleted, Paledra's all turns effect activates, lets you just instantly DNA into Dragon Mode in hand to prevent it.
That all turns effect is crazy.
Yeah, it's really, really good. It's just, it does have the hindrance of you have to have both of the cards on board. You can't have one in hand and one on board, so you have to keep that in mind. But it is nice that it's just when any of your Paledra or Dino Bee would be deleted, 2 may DNA Digivolve. So you can have two Paledra on board, for example. Like, you could have 2 of this guy, and if either of them would be deleted, you can still go into Dragon Mode. You don't have to have like Dino Bee and Paledra, for example, but just to kind of give you an idea of like a way to get some earlier chips in.
Yeah.
But anyways, we see the top end is a toolbox. This is where things get really interesting. Yeah. So we see there on 3 of the Daikin from BT-16, which makes sense. They're just trying to go for pure DNA, play out shenanigans and stuff like that. It also can make their Evo costs into blue or green Digimon cheaper as well. We see all purple options still with Scramble, Mist, and Calling. But yeah, the top end is like, we have 1 Gallantmon here, which I think is a really good card. He's just limited by his engine. But the cool thing is he can DNA from a purple level 5 and a red level 5. So you can DNA into this guy with your stacks and have most of your inherits. A lot of them from the newer ones are just generic. It's not like old Paildra, you have to have Imperialdramon in name to get the Sec +1. But like new Paildra just gives you Sec +1 in general. But otherwise, like the rest of your effects are all pretty much live. I guess your Vmon and your Oh no, this is why you have Purplemon in play. You're fine. No one's why you have a Red Digimon. So Wormmon wouldn't work, but you get Vmon's DP boost. Anyways, but yeah, so Callus works really well off of that. It's a strong card. It has the ability to bottom deck Tamers, which is really cool. It's just limited by its actual like archetypal engine, I think, at the moment, but it's a very powerful top end. We see Fighter Mode there. We see Valkyrie Ace, which makes sense. You have all red level 5s. We see the Fighter Mode Ace as well, which is also like it's all. These are interesting to me because they have to go over Dragon Mode. They can't go over your 5s, so you have to see your like. I guess you have 4 Dragon Modes. You have 2 Aces and 2 regular. But they are options that are there. And then we have the new Fighter Mode, which is a 1-of, which is really interesting. And like I said, they have the 2 Aces. But I just think it's a neat top end. It kind of just shows how flexible you can actually be with the build. You don't have to stay in the mainstream of like what this deck ideally wants to do. You can definitely toolbox it a bit and customize it to your liking. And I mean, if you settle on a good build and it works, awesome. More power to you.
This is almost like reminiscent. I wouldn't say reminiscent because it's sort of a stretch, but it's sort of the idea behind, like you sort of alluded to, this top end toolbox is like, it's like blue-green Imperialdramon toolbox, right? Where people were doing that, like using the Pile engine, right? To then like Magna X, Hexablow. Like some people were doing like a bunch of random different like strong blue-green top ends. I feel like it's sort of the same idea here. Yeah, no, fully agree. I think as the game evolves further, and this is probably a longer conversation for another video, but like we're gonna see more and more engines that will work for certain colors very well, and they might be generic enough to like work with just different top end Digimon, which is it's neat. It can be maybe a little bit broken in some cases, but it's a neat idea that we'll see how it evolves as the game progresses, right? Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's it. So congrats on that first place. Alrighty,
the next list
Xros Heart
is actually a feature of the deck profile that went live this week.
True.
Xros Heart. I mentioned this in the video. Xros is probably one of like my favorite, if not the favorite deck that I've ever played in the game. I'm excited to get the new support, but I still haven't really like found something that like resonates with me. I do feel like this deck here, which was piloted by Monster over in Italy, got first place at a shop event, is a pretty standard list for what the new Cross archetype wants to look like. You're pretty much running all of the new pieces. The only old pieces you see are really the Tamers that are still utilized, because those are the Tamers that allow you to tuck sources underneath themselves on a more consistent, regular basis. But everything else is like fresh Cross. You're not running any of the old stuff. The idea of this deck is to essentially use your lower end bodies, which include Shout, Starmon, and Sparrow, as we see here, to like do some early pokes, maybe do 1 or 2 pokes. And then the whole game plan revolves around getting all of your other pieces, from your shooting stars all the way up to your like Jaegers and Atlas Ballistas, underneath your Tamers, to be able to like assemble your pieces, so to speak, to go into Megazoid EX6 here. So the deck is really revolved around EX6 as its like win con, top end, and sort of like just end goal. It's a really interesting card, right? It's got Alliance, which is really neat for aggression. It's got Reboot for if you have a blocker in the stack, which you get through the Atlas Ballista. You know, you have a big blocker out in the field that your opponent has to deal with. It has some form of board control with the DP neg and being able to play out an additional shooting Starmon. And then when attacking, you can delete something. So again, very reminiscent to like Shout X7 when it was a thing. But the whole idea behind the deck is to get EX6 out, use the Meteor Rock Soul option to swing 2 checks Alliance, restand the boys, and swing again, hopefully for game this time around. That's really the ultimate game plan here. So again, that's why you run Mikey, little Mikey Kudo over here, the triple Tamer and the Nade, because again, these are the most consistent ways to get stuff either under your Tamers or stuff that was checked in security in the trash out to your cross pieces. The Sepia memory boost is becoming more common because, as you can notice here, a lot of the pieces either have yellow or black as a color, so you're pretty much guaranteed a hit as long as it's a Digimon card. The only interesting thing that I will say that separates this list from like some of the lists that I've seen, as well as like my own personal list that was featured on the deck profile, is that we aren't running the Volder arm. What I did was, instead of the Starmons, I just ran 2 Volder arms. Because Volder arm is an interesting tech choice. Some decks choose to run it, some not. This one obviously didn't, and just kind of opted more so for the low end consistency, which is totally fair as well. But I think it's an interesting, like, Cross is in an interesting spot. You know, we're gonna get more support in BT-21, so it'll be interesting to see where the deck goes. But overall, this is a pretty standard, like, new like EX6 build, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's cool. It's neat that they're not running really any of the level 4s either for the Jaeger or the Atler. They're just full on, just like get those sources tucked and then just get the gas going for EX6. Yeah, they definitely. I know, because I know you've had some discrepancies with the new Cross play style. And they definitely kind of switched their idea for how they wanted it played, which is interesting. Yeah. But yeah. All right. Moving on. Alpha.
My boy.
This
or
was
our boy, actually.
Our boy, yeah. I was also an alpha head back in the BT9 era, and prior to that, I tried to play X Anybody stuff, and it just was not very good until we had alpha, and then it was too good. This was a list that got first place over in China at a local card shop. So from what we can see here, it's pretty much like a lot of the newer stuff we've been seeing for alpha low end, with the inclusion of the new BT-20 Dorumon, who you won't really get anything out of the second portion of the search, but you can still find an X Anybody card. And his generic just plus 2k during opponent's turn is pretty good for his inherit. But we see this new Darugamon from BT-16, which has just been... It's a gas card. It's just so powerful. It just does everything you want for regular alpha, for Daruga, or Dorgora rather. It's also, we've seen it in Fenrir, of course. Like, it's just a powerful card. The deck's Daruga to work with it as well, just because it's a good card to evo on top of it for a little bit extra trash setup, or and/or board control. We have our restricted Dorugray, which the more I'm like, I used to be in the camp of like, I think he can come off the list. He's just one turn of protection. The more I'm like, now I'm like, with all the generic X Anybody stuff we're getting, like Gigaseedra stuff that's been happening, for example, that we recently featured on the channel. This card, if it was at a 4 of with Gigaseedra,
release him.
Could you
release him so we can cook? 3
checks, spit this guy out, and then just evo something else. I don't know. It's just scary. It's Monka. But there's a lot of scary stuff we can do. And then we have the BT-13 Dorgray in here, the old Dex Dorgray from BT-9. The top end, though, interestingly enough, is actually just running all of the newer Chronicle pieces, except for 3 of the old BT-8 Oriyumon, which is still a very powerful card. I mean, it gets protection from being deleted, and plus 2 KDP, which is really strong. And deleting based off play cost, especially 7 or less, that fits into a lot of level 6 aces or lower. So it's a very, very powerful form of removal, especially right now with how the game is. And of course, you get your end of attack effect, which is really powerful. But we see 2 of the new Oriyumon here with it has piercing, Digivolve 2. And then if it's during an attack, you can have one of your level 6 or lower Chronicle trait Digimon. When your Digimon in the breeding area may Digivolve into a level 6 or lower Chronicle trait Digimon card in the hand. Sorry, my brain had a brain fart. And then delete something when security stack is removed from, which is really nice. And then the new Alpha, which has barrier and recovery, which is really good as well. And then the same rest of the effect for the on-play when Digivolving. And then also DP reduction, which is very powerful. And then we have 3 of the new Oryukin Ace here, which is it's a good card. It's a very good card. But it's funny enough that I think so far we've seen it perform best in almost every other deck except for actual pure Chronicle. Which is funny to me. I think the Dorimon might change that a little bit. We'll have to see when we get that Dorimon promo egg. But it's funny that this card has basically just been putting in work for a lot of other decks. It almost is reminiscent of I guess not medieval Gallant necessarily, but a lot of other we get a lot of other generic top end that just ends up working better in other decks other than it's not its actual deck. that happens more often than not.
It's sort of like
with newer
Valkyries,
archetypes.
right?
Yeah, Valkyries is a good example. One of the other ones I was gonna say was gonna be Shadow's Refuge. No, I had another one, but it slipped my mind right as I was about to say it. That's tough. That's old age is creeping in, brother. It's creeping in. Anyways, but yeah. So aside from that, pretty standard tamer lineup. Maybe a little bit short on the Kosuke's, but I guess if you see like the one you need, you're fine past that point, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too, like, because I've kind of dappled into this list as well. It's a pretty like almost spot on to the list that I'm running right now, outside of like a few minor changes. With like the boosts, the trainings, I actually don't run as many trainings as this fella because I like search more, but like Cool Boy essentially is what gives you a lot of gas, right? Being able to like just wait for the right time to promote Daruga, go into Dex Daruga, tap Cool Boy, gain more memory, and do your shenanigans that way. If you're running the old BT-9 Dex Darugamon as well, that's even more memory gain that you can get. So I mean, I think Cool Boy almost acts as like a memory setter in a sense, right?
Yeah,
if you have enough of them out there.
He helps you climb up your initial line and everything, or you know, up a line in general. And then we see that this other tech that's been going around with the Mega Digimon Synthesis.
Such a good card.
It's very good. It's very, very good. So as long as you have a level 6 or higher Digimon, you can ignore color requirements. And then main, one of your level 6 Digimon and a card in your hand may DNA Digivolve into a level 7 Digimon card in your hand. So this is just a way to very like easily, like very quickly just kind of cheat out your level 7 like DNA Evos. I wonder if there's a reason to run this in Exa, actually, too. I've been thinking about.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Well.
I think any big top-end ace deck has a reason to run it.
Yeah, I agree. It's very strong. It's a very, very good card. But yeah, that's the list. Otherwise, pretty much standard alpha stuff that we've been seeing. It's cool to see people cooking with alpha again, and that it's doing pretty well. We even just recently had it featured on the channel, and it's got potential. It's got a lot of potential. So it'll be cool to see what people cook with it moving forward. I think that's enough for this list. We'll go ahead and jump to the next one here.
Sure. Next list was piloted by Jonty Kitchen over in New Zealand. Got first place at a Tamer battle, so congrats to you. This is Royal Knights. This is a deck that TJ called correctly that I would very much enjoy, and I have been enjoying a lot of it. As the new supporters come out, there's some interesting like sort of tech choices. I would say overall, this is a pretty like standard-ish Royal Knights list. This is not the like Unga Boonga, let me do like Gallant X plus Fire Rocket plus Lightning Joust, 5 checks, unsuspend sort of shenanigans. This is more of like a traditional Royal Knights build. So you've got your typical Magnus, right? You've got your Dynus for search. A lot of decks now are running the new Lord Knight that we got in BT-19, which is a really, really good card for bringing out cards like Magnamon, cards like Omekamon back out onto the field from your trash. But then we see a little bit more of a toolboxy feel to things, right? We see, interestingly, this BT-12 Gallantmon that kind of sticks out right there. I was looking at it as we were talking about other lists. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And it makes sense. It has raid, which is nice. Being able to like punch a bigger body just for like additional board control is always helpful. You get that when attacking effect too, with like you can pop something 6k DP or less. If nothing got deleted, you trash top card or security. So very similar to like what Gallant X would be like. Curiously enough, this list is not running any Gallant X. But Gallant X is a very decent tech choice in this deck as well. But I think this is a good way to hopefully deal with some floodgates. Like if you purge it, play it out, and just swing with Rush, you can go ahead and kind of nuke any sort of annoying floodgates that your opponent has on board. Speaking of nuking floodgates, you've got Jesmon here. We can pop DP. They're using the BT-13 Alphamon, which is interesting. Stopping any like high-end bodies from swinging is always a decent idea. I've also thought about floating him back into the deck, mainly because you can also just keep him on the board potentially as well for like just a poke or a swing at 12k if you really wanted to. Which is I think also really, really cool. And then interestingly, 3 of the new Omni X antibody and 4 of the old Omni. I think people have been going back and forth. I think you'll typically see more more folks doing like 4 Omni X and 3 Omnimon or 2 old Omnimon. But I think they're kind of running with the strat of like, look, we've got a ton of different Royal Knights in this build. Like, there's a lot of like one-of pieces here.
Yeah.
And the old strategy of just playing out all the boys and bringing them out is still really valid, right?
Right.
And you can still win games that way. And with how quickly this deck is able to compile your resources, I think even more reason to run more of the old Omnimon. And funnily enough, you can also just play out Omni X off of Omnimon. So
yeah, I think I think there's probably we're gonna see 2 different variants of the builds, where it's gonna be builds that are more focused on like doing the standard Royal Knights play, where you run the BT-13 Omni and it spits all the doors out, and that's your game winner right there. You might be able to chip some security early, maybe win early if you see the right pieces fast enough.
Right.
But you're playing more towards that strategy of hitting that wide board turn and rushing your opponent down. And then we're going to see strategies that's like the Fire Rocket strategy a little bit. Maybe not necessarily running Fire Rocket, but running just a more aggressive version of the build with things like Gallant X, more focused on the Omni X, stuff like that, just to kind of like try and just chip a lot of damage as fast as they can.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that'll do it for the deck.
All right. Jump onto our last list here real quick. We have Gallantmon. This was another list of top in China. We do not have the name of the winner. This was got first place in a 3v3 event that was hosted by Bandai. So pretty sick. We see it's a pretty standard for what we've seen with the newer list, right? Where we've seen a lot of the structure or starter deck pieces, along with a lot of the BT like 17 pieces, BT-12 pieces, and everything have been cycled out entirely for the new BT-19 Gallantmon pieces. I mean, this Growlmon's just a straight up power creep over the BT-12 Gallant, or Growlmon rather, sorry. The Gallantmon is just good for netting extra memory early on. Both of them having the inheritables to help you increase the threshold for your DP deletion based effects is really, really nice. Lets you just pop those bigger bodies more easily, maybe more early, so you can get more aggression out of your Gallant X play later on. We see pretty standard like top end lineup with 3 Gallant X, 3 of the BT-17 Gallant. People don't really run the BT-19 Gallant. I wish he was like a little bit better, but I think the blocker is just too valuable. And it doesn't always like, at least the BT-17 Gallant, like you can still do something with the card because you have the protections while you're swinging usually, as opposed to 19 where you're kind of like just kind of living on a hope and a prayer.
Yeah.
Although the art for that card is sick. It looks really, really cool. And then yeah, otherwise we see a lot of like the standard lineup for the 5s. We have 1 Rush Gallant in there. 1 Omni X I think is a neat call. It's a good call in general.
As well.
It can just be your like it can be your finisher for game, right?
Yeah.
Especially with like with the BT-9X antibody in there as well. And then a lot of like what we've seen with the standard Tamer lineup now, where people sort of like are starting to deviate away from EX2 Takato because you don't need the blitz anymore with the new memory setter Takato that just lets you attack a player.
Right.
And then in addition to that, they usually run some of the BT-17 Takato to do your DNA play, but we see them not running that in this list at all. And it's just 3 of the BT-19 and then 1 of the EX2, which is interesting to me. That's a curious one because I feel like the BT-17 one's really good for kind of like helping you climb back into a board, especially with like Rush Gallant and stuff. So,
right.
But I mean, it worked for them. They got first place at a 600 player 3v3 event. So, I'm not gonna question the method. But yeah, just cool to see Gallant still doing Gallant things. The deck is still very powerful. I think it definitely has a couple of like maybe a bit more tighter matchups, but it can still be very fast, very aggressive, and very good control. So no reason to sleep on it at all. It is still very much a threat, I think.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
All right. Well, that's gonna about do it for us. We ran a little bit longer here, but you know, a lot of stuff we want to talk about. We're excited for the new set, so we're extra yappy. Me and Ben have been theory crafting literally all week.
It just feels good to see new stuff again.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've had like real brainstorm sessions in like a while. We've had like little mini ones here and there, but like we've really been cooking recently, and it's been very fun to just like cook again. So that's gonna do it for us. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. stick around. We got more content coming your way. Plenty of stuff on the horizon with Booster 2.5 and the unification set on the horizon as well, along with the new starter decks. So look forward to all that. And a little bit of a spoiler. Look forward to a possible tier list in the near future. Just a little bit, just a little something to look forward to. Ooh. I think probably like most people, we're waiting until after the ban list. So, in the future. So, we're gonna head out. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.